And so there's a lot of stories there where folks are voting better on the environment because they're understanding, as Gene said, that it's not just about the environment anymore. It's about the economy, it's about public health, and it's about the future of this country from a security standpoint. So there's a lot of reasons within this scorecard and the votes that we looked at, other than just simply the environment, to vote this way. And so you're starting to see a lot of members on both sides of the aisle vote better. One example from a Democrat, Henry Cuellar from Texas, once a Dirty Dozen member, his score went up. Last session, he had an 8% score. This session, he has a 60% score. That is a huge jump. And so it's this type of progression that we're seeing, not only that they're voting better, but they're having better policies to vote on. And so I think there's a lot of stories that would seem counterintuitive, but I think it speaks again to the fact that environment has jumped up in the collective conscience of the American voter, and thus it also has jumped up in the conscience of members of Congress.
There must have been some on the other side, somebody you expected to vote well in your view, or somebody from a liberal state or a state with lots of pro-environmental voters who isn't voting the way that you would like them to vote? Like an anti-Cuellar kind of thing?
The anti-Cuellar?
Yeah.
There's several of those. I mean, if you look at one of the other indicators that I didn't cover in my talking points is which state delegations best. And there are a couple. The two in New Hampshire come to mind, where both members of the House in New Hampshire got 100% scores. And then the members of the Senate did far less than that. And so I think that if you look at the state delegation scores, there are a lot of anomalies where maybe the Senate isn't voting as good as the House, or vice versa. So again, it's not broken down. While there is obviously a correlation with party affiliation, this year I think you're going to see a lot of anomalies where across party lines you're seeing Democrats doing really well and some Democrats doing worse, and Republicans, a lot of Republicans doing better, but then obviously a lot of Republicans that are still doing very poorly on the environment.
And one example of a state where there's clearly incredibly strong bipartisan support for protecting the environment is in Maine, where both of the House members, Congressman Michaud and Congressman Allen, got 100%, and then Senator Collins also got 100%, and Senator Snowe got an 80%. So that's really excellent to see, and I think just reflecting the views of people all across Maine that these issues really do matter to their everyday lives.
Well, this methodology was obviously based on legislation that actually got floor time. Can you speak at all to what you hope to be able to score the members of Congress on next year? And if you can, tie that into this committee leadership issue that you brought up earlier, but so important in terms of Fox News positive performance and others.
Okay. Far and away, the issue that we would love to be able to score this year is global warming. There is a global warming bill in the Senate, the Warner-Lieberman bill, that did get out of committee late last fall, and will hopefully be on the floor sometime in May. We would love to also see a proposal come out of the House to be on the floor. Global warming is obviously the most pressing issue that we face for the environment and for security and for our health. So we would love to actually be able to score global warming bills on the floor, both to make progress on this issue, but also to really make sure that Congress is educated about this issue and that we know where all the members of Congress actually stand. Because again, accountability is key on these issues. We also have some unfinished business on the energy front. As I mentioned, the renewable electricity standard, which would require 15% of the electricity produced by utilities renewable clean energy by 2020. That's something that we felt just a few votes short in the Senate. We'd really like to have another chance to get that passed this year and get that scored in the next card. And finally, the other issue is the big tax to big oil. This is something that fell only one vote short in the Senate, and we would like another chance to get a vote on a similar provision that would take away the billions of dollars that are going to big oil companies when they're making record profits. Exxon just posted $41 billion, which is the most by any corporation ever, and take that money and actually move it towards getting us off of our addiction to fossil fuels and helping consumers lower their bills by investing in efficiency and renewable energy.
Just a couple other issues that we see an opportunity to make real progress this year. One is hard rock mining. As Tim said, the House passed a very strong hard rock mining reform bill. We'd like the Senate to do the same. And then we also see an opportunity to make real progress on the issue of clean water, the Clean Water Restoration Act, which we hope will have a vote in the House to restore the initial intent of the Clean Water Act.
Given the fact that President Bush threatened to veto on some of this energy legislation you're talking about, what makes you think that it would be possible to get a bill through in the remainder of this Congress that imposes new taxes or that changes the tax structure for oil companies in favor of renewable electricity? Why do you think it might happen this year?
Why do we think we could get something to the president's desk?
Do you think you can get something enacted?
Well, we're certainly hopeful. I guess clearly President Bush has arguably the worst environmental record of any president in history, but he has a few months left in office. We can continue to urge him to change his way and to recognize, as he's even himself acknowledged, that the oil companies really, the last thing they need is more subsidies. So we continue to think it's very important to invest in clean, renewable energy. One of the most pressing things is to extend the renewable production tax credit, so we're hopeful that we'll have that happen very quickly and get that to the president's desk, and certainly would hope he would sign it.
Sure. Certainly no one would have imagined a couple of years ago, that this president would have signed the only increase in mandatory increase in fuel economy standards in 32 years. So we've seen progress with new leadership in Congress, with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Reid, to actually move legislation to the White House, and we actually saw the president sign that. So we want to see that same process happen again, both on repealing the oil tax breaks, putting it into clean energy, doing a renewable electricity standard, and also making serious progress on an overall cap on global warming pollution. That's the ultimate solution we really need to get to.
Make sure I understand these numbers correctly. These report card grades, should they be viewed the same as you review your child's grades? That anything above an 80 is a pretty good job, anything below is that? I mean, there are a lot of Democrats in here who score in the 70s, and so is that the analogy that should be applied, or is there a different?
Well, I would say we deliberately don't assign letter grades, but I think people know that something 100 is perfect, something in the 90s is obviously excellent, 80s is good, but the further down you go, and of course it's disappointing to see people of either party score in the 70s or below.
You must have a cutoff. I mean, where is the tipping point here, where between good and bad?
I think that there's, as I said, we don't give letter grades, and we like to see people do perfectly or as close to perfectly as possible. There's not one hard and fast cutoff.
Okay, the bottom line goal is measured by making progress and stopping. We spent most of the last 6 years playing defense and stopping bad things from happening. Most significantly, for example, drilling refuge. Year after year after year, there were votes to stop drilling in the Arctic refuge. We didn't have a vote this year on that scorecard because that effort has been stopped with new leadership. That's great. But we actually have made progress in actually passing, again, one bill into law that is increasing fuel economy standard for the first time in 32 years, but also made progress in one house or the other on many other provisions. So the bottom line measure, when all is said and done, the scores are an indicator, but really getting us to making progress, because the real goal is to make progress on policy. That's why the elections had consequences, to get many more new pro-environment leaders in Congress. And bottom line, the goal is to make sure we pass new laws.
So what does it mean, though? I mean, Ben Nelson, 67. Max Baucus, 67. Conrad, 73. If someone said, what do I make of that in determining how to vote? What would you tell them?
Well, I would first of all look at where they've been before and see if they've made progress. I think in each of those cases, those scores are improvements over their lifetime scores. So I think we want to look at, on one measure is where they've been and where they're moving. Are they moving in the right direction to vote more pro-environment, or are they in fact moving in a different direction to increasing the group of people who vote zero? So that'd be one measure. But then it's also against, on the votes where they actually come down. So certainly we want people to be better than a 60%. But if they were a 40 and now they're a 65, that shows improvement. It shows progress in the right direction. But we still want them to be better.
And I think also there's two ways to measure it. You look at the actual score, but I think you also want to look at the body of work of Congress. And this is a way for voters to educate themselves on how their individual member of Congress is voting on environmental matters that concern them. But also, if you look at what this new Congress has been able to pass, and as Gene mentioned, we've all talked about some of the big accomplishments of this Congress versus the last Congress, even though the overall score of Congress on that 5%, I would say that it's night and day on things like the fuel efficiency standards, on just making a commitment to efficiency in general. We've made a lot of progress with the new leadership, and so that's something that's really important to look at as well. So individual scores do matter, but it's really an education tool. It's the body of work at the end of the day that is really important.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. And again, if folks want more information, you can go to our website, www.lcv.org, and see all the scores of all the members of Congress. Thank you.